Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life TV Now, where we unpack all matters of truth, faith, and freedom. I'm Joe Artis-Horn, and let me tell you something. The people here live in attendance know you are in for a royal treat. Today's guest is a wealth of information on a subject that probably many of you, I would dare say most of you, have never heard about, but holds profound truths in terms of our health and opportunities to overcome malevolent diseases. But before we dive in, let me introduce who's here. She's an integrative nutrition health coach with a Master of Science in Health Education. Please welcome Jamie Woodall. And he's the founder and chief visionary officer of Operation World Without Cancer and the Richardson Nutrition Center, the son of Dr. John A. Richardson, MD, a California physician who in the 1970s was widely persecuted for offering an alternative cancer therapy known as Laetrile, or vitamin B17, to more than 6,000 patients. Today, he carries his father's mission forward toward medical freedom and shines a light on the many hidden natural therapies that offer hope in the light in the fight against cancer. His goal, to help make a world without cancer not just a dream, but a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. John Richardson Jr.
Oh my God.
I just want to say at the onset of this program, John, we love you.
Thank you.
I've been following what I consider to be your ministerial career. I don't know if you frame it as a ministry. That's what I perceive. I've been watching what you all do over at the Richardson Nutrition Center for the last few years, and I marvel at the testimonies. I marvel at what we're seeing on social media. I marvel at what much of the mainstream media would describe as anecdotal stories of people overcoming outcomes that they were told they should not be able to overcome when given a serious diagnosis. And I just want to say at the onset, you've become a dear brother to me personally and to this ministry, and we just love you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. It's been a long time in coming, and I feel the same way about you, and we've connected on so many soul reasons. But the reason I'm here is because I want to say the message that my dad said in the 1970s, that you don't have to be afraid of this disease I have to call schmancer so many times. I have to call it the C word. I can't really use that word a lot of times because the medical industrial complex doesn't necessarily want, when I say want, it's not for evil purposes. It doesn't necessarily fit their financial system to have a cheap, effective, plentiful, God-given, found in nature, and most importantly, unpatented answer to this multi-billion-dollar industry we call the C word.
Agreed. Yeah.
So that's why I'm here to tell that message.
Well, and for platforms like this, my viewers will often hear me say the C word when we're talking about malevolent diseases, and it's because between the power structures that be and then the people that control regulation over medical speech, they would look at me and say, we don't care that you're a board-certified holistic health practitioner. We don't care that you've dedicated the latter part of your life to learning how bodies can overcome things like autoimmunity. We're going to hold tight to our narratives, and we're going to control the levers of who can say what. And if we deem that you are spreading medical disinformation, we will take your channel down. So, people like you and I struggle with how do you effectively message to the world,
Right.
when the world, I consider, still largely under the control of what I call the Babylonian construct. It's like you're trying to use social media platforms to evangelize a message that they really don't want evangelized. Then you have people calling you a coward. Well, why don't you just say it? And I'm like, well, you've obviously never tried to produce anything.
Right. Yes.
Because the minute you do, like we've been taken down repeatedly. A couple of years ago, our dear friend Lynette Hill, with her very large TikTok platform, talked about one of the DVDs that I had put out where I was talking about overcoming medically induced injury. And that's being generic because, again, we're trying to avoid cancellation here by people that make the rules for these platforms. And her video was taken down immediately.
Yep.
And she told me the next day, they've never done that before. They've demonetized, they've removed sections, or I've gotten warnings, but they threatened to take her entire channel off of the platform. And all it was just, here's the information. I didn't claim to be a medical doctor. I didn't claim to hold any cures. So anyway, it's a difficult task to get the word out. I want to cut straight into your father Dr. John Richardson Sr., MD, started work in the 1970s?
Yes, he actually graduated from medical school in the 1950s, and he was a graduate of University of Rochester Medical School. He was the top of his class. He was on the honor court. He was a Christian man, but he realized after he had finished 12 years of education, as anybody that's a doctor out there right now can testify, that you get your 12 years of education and you don't know much about nutrition. You don't know much about health. You don't know much about lifestyle choices. You don't know how those things affect. So many medical doctors that people are out there, and the audience knows this, when they go to their medical doctor, they talk about pharmaceutical answers or big medicine answers, and the simple things like eating your mother's chicken soup are not discussed. Having vitamin C, having vitamin D, getting plenty of sun, stopping smoking cigarettes, stop eating junk food. Those type of things are not discussed. And so my dad, when he graduated, he realized that. So as he looked back on his medical training, he said, I'm going to have to learn it on my own out in the real world. And so when he did start learning that, and he did start studying about natural answers, he decided that instead of sending his patients who came down with the big C to Kaiser to get cut, burned, and poisoned, which are the only 3 treatment modalities you can use, is chemotherapy, radiation, surgery. And I call them cut, burn, poison, just simply because that's what it really is. That when he would send his patients off, he'd never see them again. Less than 6% of his patients would ever survive 5 years if they were diagnosed with the big C in the 1970s. So Dad dug deep and found the story of Laetrile, of B17, of apricot seeds, and CNBC. Now, see, CNBC can get away with this. CNBC said in a February 2024 article that the Hunzas of northern Pakistan live to be over 100 years old on average. And what's the top 5 reasons they do, according to CNBC? Number 1 reason, if you look at that article, is that they eat lots of apricot seeds and apricot seed oil.
Wow.
Okay. Number 2 is they drink clean water. Number 3 is they breathe clean air. Number 4 is that they have social standing. They go to church, and number 5 is they don't eat processed food. So that is the subject that my dad found out in the 70s. So he treated over 6,000 patients successfully, but then that's when the trouble started for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, see, I'm sitting here as living evidence that what you're suggesting about the industry that we've assigned our healthcare out to, that, my belief now is that most of them are more motivated by profit than your health. And here's the thing. I'm not disparaging good doctors. I have some great medical doctor friends. We met some more this last weekend at the Secrets in Healthcare Conference.
Spent the night with one last night.
Yes, great medical doctors that got into that profession because they want to help people. They're interested in your healing and your restoration. But the people above them that control what we call academia, the information that they receive. My good friend, Dr. Jean Hovey, who is a holistic DVM, she's a medical vet for animals. She said the same thing about that industry, John. She said, we went through 7 years of medical training. I got my diploma. I got my career established. It hit the ground running. Suddenly there's a surplus of animals being thrown at me. I'm doing well. I'm financially okay. But she said we got 7 hours only of training on the last day of anything having to do nutritionally, and guess who put that on? It was one of the largest garbage dog food companies, if I can just say it, on the planet. Puts this on, and at the end, it's like, buy our product. I'm being very careful. You don't even need to worry about it. Just tell everybody to eat this food,
all the
and
nutrition. Well, it's called fortified. But as everybody knows, animals in nature don't get the big C. Remember that. I want people to remember that animals in nature that eat the foods that God intended for them to eat naturally, they don't get the big C. But when they go into the zoo, they start dying with the big C constantly. And I don't want to get anything censored. I just want to say that in the zoos is the only place that diets are processed. So my dad discovered that same thing in the human body, that the people that eat God's natural food, including the apricot seed. Why the apricot seed? Because it contains this compound called amygdalin. And amygdalin is found in over 1,200 different foods. People can get it in their lima beans, their millet, their barley, sorghum, molasses, all the things that we are not eating anymore. And as we've gone away from those things that have been taken out of our diet, when's the last time you had lentil soup?
Okay, it's been a while.
It's been a while. Lentils have amygdalin in it. And so my dad discovered that if you could provide this to his patients that had a big C, that he had miraculous results on them turning around their big C. And so that developed into him understanding, the deeper he got into the research, that C word, the big C, is a metabolic deficiency disease. Now, many of you are hearing those words I just said for the first time. The audience is looking at me like I'm crazy. It's not something you catch. It's not in your genes. It's not something that you are destined to get just because your grandmother got it. C word is 100% provably, with 100 years of documentation, is a deficiency disease, primarily of this compound found in over 1,200 foods that we've had deleted from our food source, called amygdalin.
John, you consume bitter apricot kernels every day, correct?
I do.
Now, what say you? Because a lot of people watching this, they're going to go straight to, AI programs or go online, and the first thing they're going to read is cyanide poisoning.
Oh.
And they're going to say, well, this man, John, is not a medical doctor, and he's not claiming to be a medical doctor. He's also not here to give you medical advice.
Right.
He's just sharing
I don't have patience.
what his lived experience has been and the work of his father, who was a medical doctor. What say you? You can only eat 3 maximum per day, according to the label.
Yeah.
What is your feeling about that?
Well, it's the underlying lie that everybody accepts. I want to remind everybody, God said that you should have the seed of the tree.
Yes, he
and
did.
you should have the seed of the fruit, and the seed shall be thy food. Taken literally, you understand the seed is where this compound called amygdalin is found. And the seed of the apricot or the peach or the apple or the watermelon or the grape, all the things that we now go to the grocery store and find are seedless. The seed is where we find this compound called amygdalin that has been proven over time through hundreds of studies and thousands of studies to not only be safe, but be there to keep us from getting the big C in the first place. If a society like the Hunzas that live to be over 100 years old eat 200 apricot seeds a day, and the oldest living person is 165, and that's what CNBC says is the reason that they live to be that long, I'm going to listen to the Bible, and I'm going to listen to the results of the Hunzas. I'm going to listen to the results of other people that are doing it. We have documented stories over and over, Joe, of people that regularly have amygdalin in their diet that don't have C word occur in their life. And that sounds like, is John giving medical advice? Absolutely not, because it's historical and it's thousands and thousands of cases of people. And the author of the book, World Without C, let's just say that, the author of that book was a good friend of my father's who did all this research in the 1970s, 50 years ago.
Wow.
And that gentleman just turned 94 years old just last Friday. And he says he doesn't know a single person that regularly eats amygdalin in their diet that's ever died of this big C.
Well, I'll just mention his name right now because he was also a friend of my father's. They did Bible prophecy conferences over a decade ago, but G. Edward Griffin partnered with your dad. Go ahead and bring it up.
I'm going to show the book, and if we need to, I even have some little bookmarks here of things I just recently read that again, I every time I read the book, I get more information. Ed has republished this book 24 times. It sells more copies now in a week, Joe, than it used to sell in a year when it was first published. It sells millions of copies of this book have been sold, and it's life-changing information. And if we can understand this information, not only the science, why it works, but the politics of why we don't know about it. Because the next question I get on every time I talk is why. I probably took the words out of your mouth.
Well, let me guess, and we'll see if I get it. If it were that simple, why does nobody know about this? I would also buttress part of the answer is in what you just described. People are learning about this, and that's why I led the program with not just the science, because you're going to go online and you're going to see a mudslinging contest around what the people that control the narrative are calling settled science. But how many times have we heard that in recent history, only to find out that doctors that were pushing back against recent interventions to things like pandemics were absolutely wrong? And a ton of casualties were unnecessary because of the messaging, the information that was considered medical misspeak from people out there pushing, nutrition as a way to cope with some of those things instead of medical intervention. Is this making sense?
It's given people a roadmap for exactly over the last 6 years. It's giving people a roadmap of exactly what the C word industry has done over the last 60 years.
Yeah.
Because you go, how could my doctor have told me a lie? He didn't necessarily tell you a lie. He just respouted the things he's been told.
Right.
He believes it
He believes it completely.
Yes.
He's not a bad person. And I befriended so many doctors that 5 or 6 years ago, Joe, would have told me, get out of my office. I never want to see you again. But now they're my dear friends because they know we're in this battle together of truth, of telling the truth. Because what a wonderful thing for people to hear that we actually have the science already to get rid of this dread disease that's the number 2 killer in the United States and around the world. We have already the ability that God gave us in Genesis 1:29. If we just take it literally and don't believe the lies, we can change the world as we know it. And that's unbelievably inspiring and unbelievably amazing. And that's why I'm so happy to be here on the show today to let this whole new audience for the first time hear these words. And maybe they think I'm crazy. Maybe they think, oh, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not a doctor. I am so educated about this subject. I stand up to on a daily basis oncologists, radiologists who their entire careers were only built around them knowing how to radiate something in the body when you have the C word.
Yeah.
That's their entire career. Are these bad people? No. If we find a cheap, effective, plentiful answer to this disease, their careers go away. These glass buildings that used to treat people with all these foreign amazing things are unnecessary because God said, you shall have the seed for thy food.
I would say that the cat is out of the bag.
Yeah.
And that when you say, this book sells now more than it did, 10 years ago in 1 week, et cetera, I think it's because it's catching on. I would give, of course, the Richardson Nutrition Center a lot of credit for that. I will say for me, it went like this. My good friend told me about that book. And because I looked up that book, I found out about what you all are doing. So it's becoming bigger than just you. And that's got to be a relief. It's got to be encouraging to see now other surrogates. We just came from a health conference. John stood in a room filled with MDs that are there for truth. And John, I heard so many doctors say, I've been in this industry for decades. So much of this is new for me. But now, as they've begun to use some of these nutritional supports, now they're saying, there are no databases yet because there's no interest from the people that keep control over those databases that are going to confirm this. But my real life lived experience is I have X number of patients that are doing these things, and the results speak for themselves. Their outcomes are not what was spoken over them. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense, and it's in the actual historical documentation. My dad wrote a book, and I'm going to show that book too. And I don't even own the copyright to it. Ed Griffin does. And you know what's great about that is that Ed kept it alive, even though I was going different ways in my life. Ed kept this book alive, and my dad's book also sells. And I have little notes here of different little cases because now when I go on a show like this, somebody reaches out to me and says, I was the 12-year-old girl in your book that was sent home to die of leukemia from Sloan Kettering. Again, no slam on anything, but I was sent home to die, and my parents took me to your dad, Dr. Richardson, and now I'm alive at 64 years old because I used this metabolic therapy, including Laetrile, to treat my C word, and I'm still alive today. And so these stories, I have many, many stories like that, Joe. If it was just one story, then you could say, oh, okay, that's just a one-off. I have thousands of stories like this because the C word is a metabolic deficiency disease. And don't think that I'm just treating you like little children. I need to repeat this because sometimes you need to hear this over and over because we've been lied to about so many things by this money-making machine. And I hate to keep bringing it back to that when people say, why don't I know about it? My doctor's a great man. He's a wonderful person. He is. He just was never taught that side of the menu. At the medical school, he was only taught the pharmaceutical answers. He wasn't taught the natural, God-given, cheap, effective answers because there's no money in it.
There's been this huge awakening, I think, since the pandemic, and people are hungry for the truth. The veil has been lifted, and they realize that I've been lied to this whole time. There is more information out there than I have been able to receive. And so it has to be inspiring for people to hear this and think, wow, there's another tool in my toolbox I can use in my fight against the C word.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, John, before we run out of time, there are probably people watching this show. Okay, man, you've got my attention. It almost sounds too good to be true. How does it work?
That's the great question, and it's very simple. Amygdalin is a compound that if you eat it, you get it into your system. Your body can't create it. And so B17, if you're going to do your research, you're going to find out, oh, hey, there's concerns about cyanide. The concern of everything I'm talking about, if you're concerned about cyanide, it's just as ridiculous to be concerned about a compound called amygdalin that has cyanide locked in it as if you said cyanocobalamin, which is B12, being concerned about cyanide in that compound, or saying that salt, you need to be worried about the chlorine. But here's the mechanics of how it works. Amygdalin has 4 molecules, 2 of glucose, 1 of cyanide, and 1 of benzaldehyde, and it's tightly locked in that molecule. So when you eat lima beans and millet and apricot seeds and apple seeds and all that, that amygdalin is locked tightly in your body. It's not released and causes cyanide poison. That's the lie. It only releases in the presence of a God-given enzyme called beta-glucosidase.
Yep.
And beta-glucosidase is the enzyme that's produced by the C cell. I gotta be careful. It's produced by that C cell that's in your body, that we all have it. Anybody that thinks you don't have thirst, it's a lie. You have thirst, so you cure it by drinking water. Just like you have cells that are improperly multiplying in your body. Mm-hmm. If the amygdalin comes along and the cell that produces beta-glucosidase unlocks that enzyme, then the 2 molecules of glucose are eaten. Everybody knows the C word loves glucose. Mm-hmm. Don't eat glucose if you have the C word. Everybody knows that. So then the other compounds called cyanide and benzaldehyde together kill that C word cell immediately upon contact.
Wow.
And that's why it works. That's why it works. That's not the fear factor. That's not, God said, eat the seeds, but be worried about the C word, the cyanide word. I gotta say it quietly. That is precisely why it works. Now, if that was the end of the biochemical process, you'd go, okay, well, what if I have these C cells float around in my blood, and now I've got to be worried about excess cyanide and benzaldehyde? But here's the beauty of God created another enzyme called rhodinase. And rhodinase is produced by your healthy cells. And rhodinase is, we call it the protecting enzyme, and it takes benzaldehyde and cyanide and turns them into pain relievers.
Wow.
So all the books and all the documentation and all these studies at these universities that I could talk about all said amygdalin produces pain relief for those of us that have the C word. That's why it works. So it's not only God's way of killing the C cell before it metastasizes. That's a fact. If it doesn't get to metastasize, you never develop it. So someone like G. Edward Griffin that has 94 years of experience after writing this book, and you know him, he's done stuff with you. We call him the OG of truth, whether it has to do with the Federal Reserve or the concept of having a world without cancer. He doesn't know anybody that's ever died of the C word that regularly eats amygdalin because of the biochemistry I just explained. I oversimplified it for the audience, but I challenge everybody, don't just believe the lie to stay away from what God tells us to do. Believe the truth in Genesis 1:29 and do your research. Look into it. Don't just trust that I'm saying this. Just do your own research and find out about it. That's the biochemistry. That's why it works.
I just had a thought. My brain goes boom. Because while you were talking, in the back of my head, as an interviewer, I'm always thinking, what would the world be thinking right now if they're watching this, and how would they push back? Because it creates interesting follow-up. So for clarity, and I hear this question pop into my head, yeah, but where's the case study that backs that up? Okay, where is the case study for the impact of the gospel of Jesus Christ?
Wow.
Think about that. It's going to be based on your acceptance of Jesus Christ, and you're going to go tell your friends, look what he did for my life. I was this person. I was dying. I was living in sin. My marriage was a mess. My kids wouldn't talk to me, but then Jesus. But if you were a part of somebody that wanted to control a narrative, you would say, yeah, but where's the case study that this Jesus character really changes lives? Mm-hmm. I don't see any information from the National Institute of Health. Therefore, this minister is insane. Right. Friends, we got to get back to, does this make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense.
So while you're talking, I'm thinking, yes, G. Edward, but not just G. Edward, you. There are stories that I could share. People I've watched give credit to this intervention for the reason that they're doing well.
Yep.
And absolutely. I think to myself, I talked to a woman at the conference 8 years ago. I'm not even going to reveal. It was a death sentence.
Right.
8 years later, here she is. My friend now, one of my friends from the 7th grade, is now walking out her once was a nightmare and now is getting better, in part because of what we're talking about.
Yep.
But see how I don't have a case study? Do you see how the medical industry can just say, Joe Horn is crazy. He doesn't have any information. There's no data. We didn't do a blind placebo-controlled test trial. So they've postured this sophisticated way of keeping all of us completely quiet until now.
Yeah,
I feel like the tide is turning. Do you?
Well, I was just at a conference with 700 medical doctors weeks ago, that all were convinced that the only answer to the C word was science answer. Trust the science. Well, if you trust the science, God's science shows truth that if you eat this compound, you will never get the C word in the first place. Now, that's not a crazy complex, but people don't understand that it's the lack of something that causes the C word. Just like it's the lack of vitamin C that causes scurvy, the lack of vitamin D that causes rickets, the lack of vitamin B12 that causes pernicious anemia. People get that concept, but they can't believe this complicated multi-million-dollar industry with billions of dollars spent can be as simple as Genesis 1:29 that says you shall have the seed for thy food. And so that's the key thing I want people to walk away from. We have thousands, literally thousands of case histories. We have university studies that have been covered up. We have Sloan Kettering proving it, and we will, and future shows, talk about this facts that people can find on their own that have been buried for 60 years that me and my organization are bringing out to the forefront, and they can't stop it, Joe. They can't stop this information from coming out. They can censor us. They've took me off of TikTok. They've taken me off of Google, Facebook, but they can't stop me from telling the truth and letting people wake up to the fact that God gave us the answers to this horrible, horrible disease. And all we have to do is open up our heart to hear that message, and we can be free. We can be set free.
John, for those watching, they're like, okay, you've definitely got me interested. I really want to learn some of this information that you're talking about. I want to read it for myself, and I want to, pour my coffee and really absorb it. Where would they go?
owwc.org, and you'll find studies and information and case histories, all of which is there for free for you to look at. And if you want to support our mission to make a movie, to write books, to do all this stuff, you can donate at owwc.org. My mission truly is to have a world without the schmancer within the next 3 to 4 years. And truly, with your help spreading this message, we can truly do that.
We need more surrogates. We need more surrogates. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed today, don't despair. Next week, John Richardson returns to talk about the nutritional revolution that's already sweeping across America as we speak. For everybody here in studio, John, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you both.
I'm Joe Artis Horn. Keep your eyes on the prize, which is Jesus Christ. We'll be back.